Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to our roundtable discussion this afternoon. I am Maria Fontanazza. I'm the managing editor of MDDI, and I'd like to welcome Dr. Thomas Fogarty and Dean Kamen to our discussion this afternoon. So we've only got about half an hour here, so let's get started. I want to hear your thoughts on what you think about innovation in the device industry right now in terms of the environment, the economy, healthcare reform. Do you think that the environment is conducive to innovation? Do you think it's hurting innovation?
Well, probably the first thing. I don't think any of us should be discouraged about what's going on in the United States. It's hard to say that, but I think we have to keep faith that we'll continue to be the leaders in the medical device arena. And I think the government is beginning to realize that. So that'd be the message. I'd hate people to go away and say we're dead, because we ain't dead.
And I'd like to be more optimistic than to set the threshold as we're not dead. I think that the amount of potential innovation, particularly in the medical field, has never been more exciting because of so much great new technology. But the environment, regulatory, and reimbursement is making it unnecessarily difficult for innovation to become a reality where people actually get to use it. And I think we need to adjust the public's understanding and the public's attitude about healthcare. I know both sides of the political arena like to take cheap shots at the other side and claim they're a problem. But in reality, the public has to fully embrace the idea you can't have medical miracles without some reasonable risk. It's got to be reasonable. But you can't have guarantees. And you can't have medical miracles where nobody pays anything. Everything that's ever been valuable in this world, people have expected, they pay for it one way or another. We live in a culture that somehow seems to forget that if we want all these great things to happen, we have to be prepared for both reasonable costs and reasonable risks.
So how do you recommend the public get there to that state where they fully understand that?
They stop looking for simple one-line solutions to the healthcare problem, and they stop listening, frankly, to the two extremes in our political system, neither of which is offering a realistic assessment of the situation. I think most people in a calm setting would understand that they ought to be prepared to deal with the fact that medical innovation is going to require serious investment and will have associated serious costs. And like every other human endeavor, sometimes it doesn't come out perfect. But we've got to get back to a reasonable balance in the way we view healthcare, in the same way we view, transportation. If we set a standard that there will never be another car accident anywhere, anytime, for any reason, even when a car is misused, we could get there. Everybody will drive at 3 miles an hour in bumper cars with giant balloons instead of bumpers. But 40,000 or so Americans got killed last year on the highways. 40,000 are going to die this year. We should do everything we can to stop that. But we don't shut down the highway system.
So who would you say is responsible for these misperceptions?
I'll say it again. I think both sides of our political agenda have reason to find what they think is an easy person or industry to blame. And each side wants to give the American public something they desperately want to hear. You all deserve and are entitled to health care, and it'll be free. and you all are entitled to great miracles, but there'll never be anything that could possibly go wrong. In the world of healthcare, that's not going to happen.
So if either one of you were the commissioner of FDA, what would be your first order of business?
Well, I actually, the commissioner of the FDA, I think, is seriously compromised in what he can do. And when you look at what's going on, a lot of major decisions are really not made by the commissioner. They're made by those who work for the commissioner. And that is a real deterrent. Quite honestly, the commissioner will tell people what to do that are supposedly report to him. They will do what they want, when they want, and how they want. That's not uniform, but there's enough of it going on that it can deter a lot of us from getting where we want to go relative to innovation. All these things are multifactorial, but there are things that are more responsible than others, and I think one of the things that I've identified, and Dean should give his perspective, is that it's really coming from the bottom up, not the top down.
So I would say what I'll agree with is it's not the guys in the middle, but I'm not sure we should blame the guys at the bottom. In a free culture, as we say at first, you get what you celebrate. And in any system, you have incentives. And if your incentives are perverse, your outcomes are perverse. And I would agree with Dr. Fogarty that I don't think the senior management at the FDA can go in there, wave a magic wand, and change everything that happens in a huge organization. But I'm not sure I'd blame the people in the organization for the fact that, once again, the public may be getting what we deserve because we've got political leaders that are always quick to go out and grandstand and find a reason to blame industry as if we have some incentive to make mistakes and should be punished for our efforts. And in the process of doing their grandstanding and promising, I think, unrealistic outcomes to the public, they have given incentives to the people throughout that agency over the years that incentivize the wrong behavior. If you were a fly on the wall in some industry meetings, you might conclude that we as an industry perceive the FDA, the worker bees, as deliberately unresponsive, unwilling to make decisions, lazy, incompetent, and it goes on and on and on. You could believe that somehow they attract people that are like that or train them to be like that. That's a little hard to believe. Similarly, if you listen to what a lot of our political leaders say when they analyze a situation, they believe that industry is a bunch of people that get together every morning and say, what new innovation can we make that's going to be more expensive than what we used to make, less effective, and maybe on the side it'll kill babies just gratuitously. I've never met anybody in this industry that set out to make a more expensive, less effective, potentially dangerous product. It's not in their best business interest, and these are people that have devoted their life to trying to do the right thing. I similarly believe that people inside the FDA probably want to do the right thing. But all you have to do is look at the news over the years, and if 20 million kids are vaccinated with some great new solution that wipes out something, like polio or smallpox, and then there's one potential issue somewhere, that's what gets the news. And there's never a shortage of senators or congressmen that are willing to go out there and patronize the public by explaining that somebody in this room somehow is a villain and needs to be punished. And then they go out, if one of those bad things ever happens, and they haul somebody up from the FDA, make a spectacle out of reprimanding them and explaining they didn't do their job of protecting the public. Well, if you've now put such a disproportionate balance between risk and benefit, such that you're basically telling the FDA employees, we're going to castigate you every time there's an issue or even a potential issue. But if things are going well and millions of people are getting great new things, nobody gets any recognition, over time, you will have convinced, through these perverse incentives, everybody inside the FDA that they believe their job is to make sure at all costs nothing bad ever happens or even could potentially happen. I know how to do that. Let nothing happen. And if nothing happens, that perverse incentive to say that's okay will become the stock and trade of that agency. But the unintended consequence of that is that not by the commission of a problem, but by the omission of great new innovations becoming part of the standard of care, the American public is losing out. You know, we don't measure in the headlines how many people didn't get treated by the product that wasn't developed, that never got delivered, because innovative people have decided it's too risky, there's too much punishment, there's too much blame. We'll just go make video games. We'll just go do something else. We've got to convince innovative people to put their energy and passion into making medical products because they're important. And we've got to convince the public that they've got to make sure that our political leaders properly represent reasonable risk and reasonable reward if we expect to remain the leaders in the world of medical innovation, and if Americans expect to get innovations quickly. There is no way to assure people with 100% that there's no potential downside. Get over it.
So on a political level, would you say that there's any 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, people who are advocates for this industry and really trying to promote public awareness and encourage innovation?
Yeah, there are. They come mostly from the Republican side. But there are two Republicans that get their kicks out of pointing out what industry did wrong, and they get their kicks out of dragging people up to Congress, accusing them of evil, nasty things, indicating to them that they're just interested in money and not much else. The press really gets kicks out of reporting what we did wrong, whether it be a physician related to malpractice or whether it be industry building something that's going to kill somebody. Yeah, none of that makes sense. And you said it. It makes no economic sense. I mean, when that happens, whether it be a device or a drug, they're dead. If they're not dead, they're in the intensive care unit trying to recover from whatever was said. And it doesn't make any difference if it's 1 out of 1,000,000. They'll get the story, and people in press like to read bad things. So, and if you go on television and you look at the number of attorneys, firms announcing, if this happened to you, come call us, it's a free consult. In one 24-hour period, and I counted during the day and then others counted during the night, in the San Francisco Bay Area, there were 16 individual law firms pointing out who the patient could sue. So anyway, those things are not very pleasant. Certainly it's misleading. Unfortunately, sometimes industry has been misleading. We cannot solve all problems with any drug or any technology at this point in time. And yet they sometimes present it as they can. And it just doesn't happen. I don't care how careful you are, how much money you spend. Bad things happen. I think they spent a spaceship up that didn't come down. I don't think anybody planned that. But many act like those things are planned and we do them. I don't think that's true in our industry.
So when you're saying that, people pay attention or read about more so when bad things happen, do you think that that is hurting investment in the medical community, especially affecting entrepreneurs and startup companies?
In a way it is, but I think there are other things that are more pertinent that discourage. Even some of our large academic medical centers view industry as evil, and that certainly has an impact on many of the students. It will have an ongoing impact because if there's no innovative people in the medical industry, who are the new kids going to emulate? There's not going to be anybody. And that is probably the most dangerous thing that is occurring now in some of our most prestigious medical schools. Industry is evil. Anybody that associates with them is also evil.
Why? Why would an institution say something like that?
They're stupid.
That can't be the only reason.
Well, I wish you'd tell me what the other ones are. They don't appreciate that their medical schools, their mission should be to improve healthcare. That is their mission. They should be taught to benefit patients. We will only benefit patients by the process of innovation. You find most of these individuals at that level have never innovated anything that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's a couple that did something. They're great at science. They're not too good at technology. And there's a difference. And I don't think the scientists that are often in medical schools really understand that. I mean, you need both, but we're technologists. I mean, if you be really what we are, certainly surgeons are. We're technology oriented. Those that aren't really taking care of patients, they may have during their training, but then they get into administration and they never revisit the patient obligations. And those are the ones that you usually reach a level where they set the tone of the institution. So I think when I look at it over my career, it used to be that clinicians were higher in stature, people that took care of patients. Now the scientists have gone well beyond that in their stature and in their control. So that's what I've observed over the years based on my experience.
So how can clinicians kind of reach that point? Do you think that there needs to be an educational process earlier? Where does that fall into place in their education? Or
well, it's very early. I mean, as surgeons, we're taught during our training to stay out of trouble. You do the same thing, and you do it the same way, and you do it to the same patients. And if you don't do that, you'll get sued. So they just do the same thing over and over again. Well, sometimes doing the same thing over and over again doesn't really improve a whole lot. The way you're going to improve is to innovate, develop other technologies that even may replace you. So you look at any specialty, they don't like new technologies that will put them out of business. You know, it makes sense. They're not going to like that because they'll be out of business. So a new technology may replace one surgeon, and that could be a cardiologist, or it could be a cardiac surgeon. An example of that, cardiologist has really replaced much of cardiac surgery. Cardiac surgeons don't like that, so they resist it. So there are multiple factors that deter us from being innovative. It's hard to overcome that. People don't like to be replaced. They like to do the same things.
so you don't think it's a perspective from the clinician side of being risk averse?
Oh, it is risk averse. Yeah, I mean, you engage in something new. It's not the standard of practice. Most lawsuits occur because you haven't adhered to the standard of practice. And you'll get sued. and you might as well just pay them rather than argue about it. So there are different ways to solve this. Probably I'd start getting rid of the malpractice attorneys first.
How?
Choose your weapon.